The longest recovery on record, my friends. And if you're close to or recently retired and not taking a more defensive position, I simply don't know what to tell you. Look, I am not near retirement. So there's two sets of people here. One that are still building and one that are going to be soon decumulating. I am on the still building scheme, and thus I'm not taking a more defensive position because of what's called dollar cost averaging. Markets go up, markets go down, my money goes in. It's just that simple. If you're on the cusp of retirement, you doggone better be taking a more defensive position. I was talking to a lady today, and she only had $400,000, Josh. How could she retire? And she has a mortgage. Anyway, she's about to retire, and she actually, tears in her eyes. Well, she kind of did, man. It's nuts. And we're talking about dogs. I had tears in my eye talking about dogs, but she had tears in her eye because she's thinking she can actually retire. Just a regular, and she wants to go take care of rescue dogs. We'll call her Jane. I said, Jane, you've worked your tail off for nearly 40 years and basically not a high-paying job, making less than $50,000 a year. Maybe I'll just do another video on her because she's fantastic. Her and her husband, just fantastic. Anyway, the point being is she has about $400,000. That's it. And she has a small mortgage. And she's like, what should I do? And I said, man, put it into Vanguard. Put 50-50 Wellesley, 50-50 Wellesley. And I can't tell her to do this. I'm certainly not doing it for her. I said, she asked me, should she do 50 Wellington, 50 Wellesley? I said, absolutely. In fact, let's take a look. Well, I'll come back to that. I'll do another video. But right now we're in the longest recovery we've ever had. It's time to take a defensive position. That doesn't mean you go all bonds, nothing. Actually, what is the market doing right now? So yesterday we got smoked. Today we're down. The yields on treasuries are down. Pretty much everything's down except emerging markets, which isn't up much. All right, so let's read this by my man Ron Sears. I thought this was pretty interesting. Stocks, U.S. stocks have performed extremely well in the past 13 years, but bonds have not. That's interesting because he talks about bonds having not, but then we see what have bonds actually. Oops, 1 second. 4.4. Oh, bond returns have been below average, returning 4.4%. That ain't too bad. Here's the average 6.6% on bonds since basically whatever that came and see what that says. Was that 1930, I guess? And here's the bonds of the last 4 years, or last 13 years. Well, it's going to be even lower going forward. I mean, that's all there is to it. It's going to be even lower, which is another reason why I believe deflation. How dare you think deflation? In the long term, the bonds are going to be deflationary. I mean, everything's going to be deflationary. And when I mean long term, over the next, 1 to 3 years, no. After that, absolutely. It's just demographics, man. Demographics lead everything. Inflation has cost many governments their government. Just historically, inflation and the price of energy destroy governments. They do what they can to solve that, unless they have the jackbooted thugs, a la Hugo Chavez, marching down the streets. They're just not going to allow inflation, and they're not going to do it by price controls because that's idiotic. And I think even the Democrats know that's not going to work. What they do is they say we're going to have to open up the pipelines. They're going to have to open up this emergency procedures for that. It's just the way it's got to be, man. I mean, it's kind of like the EU now saying nuclear and natural gas are green. Look, man, this is just common sense. I mean, give me a break. Anyway, so what happens here is inflation is a bugaboo of all governments. Inflation will be short-term lived, 100%, but it's going to be painful because the supply chains, the vax mandates, all that stuff will go away at some point, simply due to the fact that the governments can't exist with these things. It's just not going to happen. Just look what happens with Boris Johnson today. He's getting rid of all the mandates, all of them. Well, he's in trouble politically. It makes sense. I mean, he's still a clown. He still should step down. But here's bonds, 4.4. I'll take that. But you're not even going to get 4.4 in bonds going forward. It ain't going to happen. All right, so let's keep talking about my man here. Right here. Aside from a quick down blip in the first quarter of 2020, when the first wave came, since 2008, the U.S. stock market, as measured by the S&P 500, has skyrocketed growing approximately 600% when dividends are included. I mean, that's nuts. 600%. In addition to the steepness of the recovery, it's the longest recovery on record if you don't view the 2020 blip as ending the recovery, which it shouldn't because that's a 35 days. It should feel to most investors that the 13 years is the best ever. It almost was. But it's not. This is what's crazy. The following exhibit shows all 13-year returns for stocks. The U.S. market, as measured by the S&P 500, returned 600% from 2008 to 2021. But it was only ninth out of 84 13-year periods, so top decile. But it's only ninth. Isn't that nuts? The greatest 13-year return was the 13 years ending in 1955. Isn't that interesting? So in the middle of World War II, when you could buy way low, averaging 19% a year. I mean, that's nuts, man. Average 300. So 13 years, 325%. Has averaged the 13 years, which is 12% per year. Look, man, I got a 100% stocks getting 6.5%. That's it. Almost just a bit more than half of what the average has been, because I don't believe that. I think we are an anomaly. The last 100 years, I don't think are going to repeat itself. I don't. Doesn't mean I think America's doomed. Well, we are. All empires are doomed, but it means at the end of the day, you should not bank on an average 12% a year. You shouldn't. And especially when we're coming where we are right now, the longest recovery on record. Let's see here. Right here. Bonds earn their coupon plus capital gain or losses. Falling interest rates, general capital gains. Increasing interest rates, generate capital losses, but you get your coupons. Investment returns over the past 13 years have been driven by QE, quantitative easing. Warren Buffett observed that QE is an experiment of magnitude and consequence that has never before been conducted. No one knows how it'll end and what its effects will be, but it will be gradually reduced starting in 2022. Yeah, so they say. Much of this recovery has been orchestrated by zero interest rate policy. It's required massive money printing of around $5 trillion to buy up bonds, manipulating their prices above natural levels. I completely agree with that. But inflation is now forcing the Fed to taper, reducing its bond buying, and bond yields will increase. I agree with that 100%. They're going to increase a little bit, but we shall see how far. Increases in bond yields drive bond prices down. It should also drive stock prices down, as well as analysts discount future earnings at a higher discount. Yep. The end of the ZERP is the end of the stock and bond manipulation. As Warren Buffett observed, when the tide goes out, we see who's swimming naked. Yep. Without this invisible hand of monetary policy, stock and bond prices will be determined by investors, as was the case before quantitative easing. I don't know about that. We'll see. I mean, at the end of the day, the stocks are still making earnings, and that's all that matters for stocks is earnings. Bonds is just coupons. If coupons go up, you're going to be fine. You know what you're going to get. You're not going to make much money, but you're not going to get smoked either. If interest rates do go up, that will affect bond prices in the short term, but certainly going to affect stock prices too in the short term. I got a little. Get a haircut. Need my wife to cut that hair. Anyway, take a defensive measure, man, if you are about ready to retire. I tell you, man. So I'll do another video on this, but take a defensive measure. All right, we'll see you.